Yeah, so I think in March 2016, on the 15th of March, in fact, I sent an email to the chief of police and to the deputy president of the country. He was copied on it. And in that email, I made it crystal clear that I was intending to hold a press conference on the 4th of April in Whitehall. And the purpose of the press conference was to announce that the government in South Africa had been captured by criminals and that the police were part of it and that the country was corrupt, and that my intention was to state that people should not invest in South Africa until the back had been broken on the corruption that was taking place in the country. And I also linked some senior police officer who I mentioned at the time, who was involved with other people, and I knew that those other people were involved in money laundering for Al-Qaeda. So I said it was an unsavory situation and it need to be stopped. And in the same email, I sent a photograph of the mansion in which the chief of police lives. And I said to him, I'd like you to explain where you got the money from to buy that house, because I was satisfied that it had been purchased with the proceeds of crime. And I told them in the email that I was flying out on the 1st of April in the evening. I gave them the flight number. And I said to them, go do what you did to the people who fought against apartheid. Go drag me off the plane, stop me from flying, and see what happens. And they did. So I was sitting on the plane with my two young children, one aged 8 and one aged 9, and they yanked me off the plane. They tortured me by keeping me in inhumane conditions for 3 days. And then they kept my passports and they released me, and I couldn't leave the country. I was stuck in South Africa. So they were doing exactly what they used to do to the apartheid, the people that were standing up against apartheid. And I wasn't allowed freedom of movement. I couldn't go outside of the area where I lived. I wasn't allowed, for example, to go on a plane to Cape Town. I couldn't go on a plane to London. I was stuck in the country. And I had to spend a lot of money and take a lot of time in court in order for all of this to be removed from my shoulders. And now I'm suing the government and the people that were involved for an amount of about 160-ish million rand.
That's incredible. And can you tell us who are these people that were involved in that?
Well, the chief of police, the president of the country, the head of intelligence in the country, the minister of intelligence, a guy by the name of David Machlobo. So pretty much all of the people that were involved in what I class as organized crime at a political level within South Africa. And I had been for several years taking steps to expose these people. And if you look on, so apart from my forensic practice, I run a charity called Forensics for Justice. And Forensics for Justice have a website. And if you look on our website, you can see some of the cases we were involved in. For example, the mistress of the president is a woman called, or one of the many mistresses of the president is a woman by the name of Dudu Mayeni. And she at the time was the chairman of South African Airways. And she was doing nothing more or less than stealing from the airline and driving it into bankruptcy. And I made it clear, I opened a criminal docket against her in March, also several weeks before I was dragged off the plane. And I made it clear in that criminal docket that she was involved in corrupt practices. So I also targeted Lucky Montana, who had been involved in, shall I say, fleecing the National Rail Agency of South Africa, which is called PRASA, the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. He had fleeced out of about 4 billion rand. And graciously shared some of the spoils of his corruption with the president of the country. So the pattern that was emerging in South Africa was that you were allowed to be corrupt, provided you shared some of the proceeds with number one. Now, anybody that was around in the States in the last 100 years would know that fits exactly the modus operandi of a mafia-like crime syndicate, where you can go and commit crime and you're immune to prosecution, you're immune to any treatment at all, providing you pay your dues. And that's what's been going on in South Africa.
But I mean, to torture someone is an extremely arrogant act, and some would say even stupid, because obviously if you get away, now you tell everyone the story. I mean, it's potentially smarter to kill someone. Do you know of everyone else that has been treated like you have been treated? Or is
I don't actually. I think the problem is I was a bit of a strange card for them, because there were honest policemen and there were honest prosecutors and there were other honest people within government circles who also wanted to stand up against corruption. And what happened to them was they lost their jobs. Now, I wasn't a government employee. I was running a charity which was exposing corruption. So I hadn't done or wasn't receiving any public funds. I wasn't getting a salary from the taxpayer. In fact, I was a taxpayer contributor in my business life. My forensic practice was contributing several million rand a year in taxes. So I was a taxpayer rather than a civil servant. Now, all the civil servants that were involved, they lost their jobs. They were targeted, they were suspended, and they were fired under false circumstances. And that included some very senior police officers. You know, those police officers lost their jobs. Now, they couldn't fire me because I wasn't working for them. So they decided instead to set me up on fake criminal charges. And that campaign against me started with my arrest and being dragged off the plane, and went on for several years. I had to appear in court, I think 160 times over 3 years, on different trials and different charges. They alleged I was involved in treason, racketeering, espionage, extortion, kidnapping, every fraud, everything you can possibly think of. I got charged with it. I think they didn't charge me with murder, but they charged me with pretty much everything else they could think of to charge me with. And one by one, all of these cases unraveled in court, and the judges made scathing findings against them when the cases were dismissed. So now I'm not facing any charges at all. I've been acquitted on all the charges I was charged with. And if I wasn't acquitted, they were just thrown out of court. They were removed from the role. So now they have a problem because they failed to silence me. And now I'm more vocal than ever in exposing them. And now they're afraid to come near me. So they're afraid to bring any more fake criminal charges against me because they got such a hiding the last time.
But on a more serious note, in that interview for Biz News, you mentioned that you are targeted and there are people that are trying to kill you. Do you have some evidence of that, stories of that? How do you know people are trying to get rid of you?
Well, when people get arrested for carrying out surveillance in the street where I live, and they're found in illegal possession of firearms and blue lights in their vehicles. And then we got inside people of the crime syndicate involved who become state witnesses, and they give sworn statements, which details in quite some detail about how they were planning to kill me. I think the evidence is all there. We have a colonel, lieutenant colonel in crime intelligence, who's provided a very detailed sworn statement to the oversight judge of the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation. Now, that judge issued a judgment a few months ago, which was a scathing attack on some generals in the police, which clearly implicates them in being involved in going after this lieutenant colonel for no other reason than she came to me to warn me that there was going to be an attempt to kill me. So the evidence is all out there, and it's not anecdotal evidence, it's prima facie evidence. So there are a number of people at this very moment in time awaiting trial for conspiring to murder me.
And did this happen during Ramaphosa's presidency or during Zuma's presidency? Has anything changed?
Well, it happened during Zuma's presidency. I'm not aware, since Ramaphosa took over, I'm not aware of any attempt by anybody to kill me. Although I can imagine there would be a few out there that would probably not lose any sleep if something did happen to me.